first time I saw him, he was breaking a man's nose. It was my third day at Riverside Correctional, and I was still learning the unspoken rules that govern life inside these concrete walls. I'd been warned about yard time, how the guards looked the other way, how disputes were settled with fists and improvised weapons, how the weak were separated from the strong in the most brutal ways possible. I was definitely weak. My name is Jamie Chun, and before this nightmare began, I was a 24-year-old art teacher with soft hands and softer sensibilities. The fraud charges that landed me here were the result of trusting the wrong person with the wrong information, but explanations meant nothing in orange jumpsuits. I was 5'8", lean in all the wrong ways, and had never thrown a punch in my life, which is why, when Marcus Reaper Delacroix stepped between me and 3 inmates who decided I looked like easy prey, I knew I was witnessing something that would change everything. The man he hit, a mountain of muscle and scars named Briggs, went down like a felled tree. The other 2 backed off immediately, hands raised in surrender. And Reaper, all 6'4" of lethal grace, turned to look at me with eyes the color of storm clouds. "You okay, pretty boy?" His voice was rough velvet, Louisiana accent thick as honey. I could only nod, my throat closed with fear and something else I couldn't name. He studied my face for a long moment, then jerked his chin toward the weight bench. "Stay close to me while you're out here. These animals smell fear from a mile away." That was the beginning of everything. Reaper had been inside for 6 years of a 10-year sentence for armed robbery. He was 31. Built like a Greek god carved from granite, and commanded respect through a combination of strategic intelligence and ruthless violence. His dark hair was cropped military short, and intricate tattoos covered his arms. A sleeve of thorns and roses on the left, scripture and crosses on the right. But it was his face that haunted me. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, and a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. A souvenir from his first year inside. He'd tell me later. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, like a blade that could cut you just by looking at it wrong. For reasons I couldn't fathom, he decided I was worth protecting. Why? I asked him one evening, as we sat in the common area, playing chess on a battered board someone had carved from with scraps. Why what? His attention was focused on the pieces, calculating his next move with the same intensity he brought to everything else. "Why are you helping me? What do you get out of it?" He moved his rook, capturing my bishop. Maybe I like having something pretty to look at. Heat flooded my cheeks, and I ducked my head to hide my reaction. But I caught the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth, and something fluttered in my chest, dangerous and electric. The protection came at a cost I hadn't anticipated. Being under Reaper's wing meant being constantly aware of his presence, constantly grateful for his intervention, constantly reminded of how helpless I was without him. It also meant dealing with the assumptions other inmates made about our relationship. Reaper's got himself a pretty little boyfriend. I heard Torres whisper to his crew as I passed their table in the cafeteria. Wonder what he had to do to earn that protection. Another voice added, followed by crude laughter. I wanted to deny it, to set the record straight, but the words died in my throat, because the truth was more complicated than they knew. The truth was that every night, lying on my narrow bunk, I found myself thinking about Reaper's hands, his voice, the way he moved through the world like a predator who'd never known fear. The truth was that I was falling for the man who'd saved me, and I had no idea that salvation would become my damnation. 3 weeks into my sentence, everything changed. I was working in the library, one of the safer assignments Reaper had helped me secure, when I felt someone watching me. I looked up from the books I was shelving to find him leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. "Closing time, Chun," he said, though we both knew the library stayed open for another hour. I nodded, setting down the books and following him out. But instead of heading back toward our cell block, he guided me down a corridor I'd never been through before, past empty offices and storage rooms, until we reached a door marked maintenance. "Reaper, what?" He turned the handle and pulled me inside, closing the door behind us. The room was small and cluttered with cleaning supplies, lit only by a single bare bulb that cast harsh shadows across his face. "Been watching you," he said quietly, backing me against the door. "The way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention." My heart was racing, pulse thundering in my ears. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't lie to me, Jamie." He braced one hand against the door beside my head, close enough that I could smell his skin, soap, and something uniquely him. "I see how you watch my hands when I'm eating. I see how your breath catches when I get too close." "Reaper." "Say my name," he commanded, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "What?" "My real name. Marcus." The word fell from my lips like a prayer. "Marcus." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the armor he wore like a second skin. "I've been trying to stay away from you," he admitted, "trying to keep this professional. Protection for protection's sake. And now..." His free hand came up to cup my face, thumb tracing my bottom lip with devastating gentleness. Now I don't think I can anymore. When he kissed me, it was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd expected rough, demanding, possessive. Instead, he kissed me like I was something precious, something that might break if he wasn't careful. His lips were warm and soft, moving against mine with a reverence that made my knees weak. I melted into him, hands fisting in the fabric of his jumpsuit, pulling him closer until there was no space between us. He groaned against my mouth, the sound vibrating through my chest, and suddenly gentle became desperate. His hands were everywhere, threading through my hair, skimming down my sides, pressing into the small of my back. I'd never wanted anything as much as I wanted this moment to last forever, wanted to drown in the feeling of being desired by this dangerous, beautiful man. "God, you're perfect," he breathed against my throat, lips trailing fire across my skin. "So perfect it hurts to look at you sometimes." I couldn't find words, could only arch into his touch as he mapped every inch of exposed skin with worshipful attention. When he pressed his hips against mine, I felt exactly how much he wanted me, and the knowledge sent electricity racing through my veins. "Marcus, please. Tell me you want this," he demanded, pulling back to search my face. "Tell me you're not just grateful, not just scared being alone in here. I want this," I said without hesitation. "I want you more than I've ever wanted anything." What happened next was acclaiming in every sense of the word. Marcus took me apart with his hands and mouth, worshipped me until I was shaking and desperate, then put me back together in a way that left me fundamentally changed. He ruined me for anyone else, branded himself onto my soul with every kiss, every touch, every whispered endearment. Afterward, as we straightened our clothes and prepared to return to our separate realities, he caught my hand. "This doesn't change anything out there," he said, though his thumb was stroking across my knuckles in direct contradiction to his words. "I still protect you, you still stay safe. But in here..." He gestured to the small room that had become our sanctuary. "In here, you're mine." The arrangement we fell into was intoxicating and dangerous in equal measure. During the day, Marcus was my protector, watchful, professional, keeping just enough distance to avoid suspicion. But 2 or 3 times a week, he would find reasons for us to be alone. A maintenance room, an empty classroom, once, memorably, the chapel after hours. Each encounter left me more desperate for the next, more addicted to the way he could make me forget where we were, what we were. In his arms, I wasn't inmate 47291. I was Jamie, desired and cherished and completely, utterly his. "You're getting attached," my cellmate Rodriguez warned me one evening, watching as I stared across the common area to where Marcus was playing cards with his crew. "That's dangerous in a place like this." "I'm fine," I lied. "No, you're not. You're falling for him, and that's going to get you hurt. Men like Reaper don't do relationships, Chun. They do transactions." His words stung, because part of me feared they might be true. What did I really know about Marcus beyond what he chose to show me in those stolen moments? What did I have to offer someone who could have his pick of anyone in this place? My insecurities came to a head during my 4th month inside. I was shelving books in the library when I overheard a conversation between 2 guards. Delacroix has been model prisoner lately, Officer Patterson was saying. Haven't had a single incident report on him in months. He's got motivation, replied Sergeant Morris. Word is he's trying to get early parole. Been working with some bleeding heart lawyer on the outside. My blood turned to ice. Early parole. Of course. Marcus had been on perfect behavior, avoiding fights, keeping his head down, and I was a liability, a complication that could jeopardize everything he'd worked for. That night, when he tried to pull me into our usual hideaway, I resisted. Can't tonight, I said, not meeting his eyes. I'm tired. He frowned, studying my face with those perceptive gray eyes. What's wrong? Nothing. I need some space. Something flickered across his expression. Hurt, maybe, or confusion. But he nodded curtly and stepped back. Your choice, Chun. The formal use of my last name cut deeper than any blade. I avoided him for a week, throwing myself into library work and keeping my head down in the yard. It was torture watching him from a distance, seeing the careful mask he wore, missing the intimacy we'd shared. But I told myself it was for the best. He deserved his freedom, and I wouldn't be the thing that stood in his way. My resolve crumbled when Torres decided to test the waters. I was alone at a table in the cafeteria, picking at my food, when he and 2 of his crew sat down uninvited. Marcus was across the room with his back to us, deep in conversation with someone I didn't recognize. Well, Torres said, leaning closer than necessary. Looks like Reaper's lost interest in his little pet. I kept my eyes on my tray, trying to project indifference. Word is you 2 had a falling out. Torres continued, his voice dropping to a predatory whisper. Shame. Now you're all alone again, just like when you first got here. His hand landed on my thigh under the table, fingers digging in possessively. I jerked away, but he followed, leaning in until his breath was hot against my ear. How about you and me get better acquainted? I'll take real good care of you. Get your hands off me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Or what? You'll run crying to your boyfriend? I don't think he's interested anymore, pretty boy. Torres's grip tightened and panic flared in my chest. I looked desperately toward Marcus, but he was still turned away, unaware of what was happening. Let go. Problem here? The voice came from directly behind Torres, and we all froze. I looked up to see a mountain of a man I recognized, but had never spoken to. Jimmy Tank Morrison, one of Marcus's crew. Tank was serving life without parole and had a reputation that made even the guards nervous. Just talking, Torres said, but his hand disappeared from my leg immediately. Looked like more than talking to me. Tank replied mildly, Maybe you boys should find somewhere else to eat. Torres and his friends left without another word. Tank slid into the seat across from me, studying me with dark eyes that missed nothing. You're an idiot, he said conversationally. Excuse me? Reaper's been walking around like someone shot his dog for a week. Won't say why, but I can guess. You think pushing him away protects him? Heat flooded my cheeks. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Tank leaned back, arms crossed. Let me tell you something about Marcus Delacroix. That man's been hard as nails since the day he walked in here. Nothing touched him. Nothing got to him. Then you showed up, and suddenly he's got something to lose. That's the problem. That's not a problem. It's a gift. You think he cares about early parole more than he cares about you? Boy, you don't know him at all. Before I could respond, Tank was gone, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing realization that I might have made a terrible mistake. That night, I lay in my bunk staring at the ceiling, wrestling with everything Tank had said. Rodriguez was snoring softly above me, and the usual sound of the cell block, distant conversations, the occasional shout from a guard, faded into background noise. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, someone was shaking my shoulder. I opened my eyes to find Marcus crouched beside my bunk, his face barely visible in the darkness. "Come with me," he whispered. I followed him out of the cell and down the corridor, past sleeping inmates and nodding guards, until we reached the chapel. He had a key somehow. I didn't ask how, and led me inside, locking the door behind us. The chapel was empty and dark except for the moonlight streaming through stained glass windows, casting colored shadows across the pews. Marcus walked to front and sat down heavily, head in his hands. "I heard what happened in the cafeteria today," he said, without looking at me. I remained standing by the door, uncertain. "Tank told you?" "Tank told me a lot of things." He finally looked up, and even in the dim light, I could see the exhaustion in his face. "Including the fact that you think I'm trying to get early parole. Aren't you?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "Yeah, I am. Been working with a lawyer for months, trying to get my sentence reduced." "You know why?" I shook my head. "Because I want to get out of here and build a life worth having. A life with you in it." He stood, taking a step toward me. "Did you really think I'd throw that away for a few months of freedom?" I thought I was a liability, that I'd messed things up for you. "Jamie." My name sounded like a prayer on his lips. "You are the only thing in my life that's not messed up. You're the only reason I want out of this place." The distance between us disappeared in 3 quick strides. I met him in the middle, crashing into his arms like a man drowning who'd finally found shore. He held me tight enough to bruise, his face buried in my neck. "Don't ever shut me out like that again," he breathed against my skin. "I can handle anything this place throws at me, but I can't handle losing you." "I'm sorry," I whispered, holding him just as tightly. "I'm so sorry." He pulled back to cup my face in his hands, thumbs wiping away tears I didn't realize I was crying. "I love you," he said. The words hit me like a physical blow. "I know this place. I know the situation. I know it's crazy, but I love you." "I love you too," I replied without hesitation. "God, Marcus, I love you so much it scares me." When he kissed me this time, it was different from all the others. There was desperation in it, and possession, and a tenderness that made my chest ache. We sank to our knees right there in front of the altar, hands fumbling with clothes, desperate to be closer, to reconnect in the most fundamental way possible. He made love to me on the chapel floor with a reverence that felt almost religious, whispering promises and endearments against my skin until I was shaken with more than just physical need. Afterward, we lay tangled together in the colored moonlight, and I felt more complete than I had in weeks. "The lawyer thinks I might get out in 8 months," Marcus said quietly, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my chest. Good behavior, overcrowding, the fact that I was a first-time offender, it all works in my favor. "That's amazing," I said, and meant it, even though the thought of him leaving while I still had 3 years left made my heart clench. "I'm not going anywhere without you," he said, as if reading my thoughts. "I'll wait. However long it takes, I'll wait." "Marcus." No arguments. "I found you in this hell, and I'm not losing you when I get to heaven." The next 8 months passed in a blur of stolen moments and growing anticipation. True to his word, Marcus's lawyer managed to get his sentence reduced, and his parole hearing was scheduled for early May. The night before he left, we lay together in our secret place, a storage room we claim as our own, and talk about the future. "I'm going to get a job," he said, his arm around me as I rested my head on his chest. "Something legitimate. I've got connections on the outside, people who owe me favors. And I'm going to find us a place to live for when you get out." "What if I'm different when I get out?" I asked. "What if 3 more years in here changes me?" He tilted my chin up, so I had to meet his eyes. "Then I'll love whoever you become. But Jamie, baby, you're stronger than you think. This place didn't break you in 8 months, and it won't break you in 3 years." The morning of his release, I wasn't allowed to see him off, but he left something for me, a letter and a small wooden cross he carved from a piece of contraband wood. The letter was everything I'd hoped for and dreaded in equal measure. My beautiful Jamie, by the time you read this, I'll be free. But leaving you behind is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. These months with you have been the best of my life, even in this godforsaken place. I meant what I said. I'm going to wait for you. I'm going to build us a life worth having. And I'm going to be there when you walk out those gates. The cross is made from a piece of the chapel floor, the same floor where we first said we loved each other. Keep it close, and remember that no matter how far apart we are, you carry my heart with you. Stay strong, stay safe, and don't let this place dim your light. I love you more than words can say. Forever yours, Marcus. 3 years. I survived them day by day, letter by letter, visit by visit. Marcus kept every promise he made. He got a job at a construction company, worked his way up to foreman. He found us an apartment, small but clean, with good light for the art studio. He set up in the spare bedroom. He visited every week, wrote every day, and never once gave me reason to doubt his commitment. The day of my release, he was waiting outside the gates at dawn, leaning against a pickup truck I'd never seen before, but somehow knew was ours. He looked different in civilian clothes, broader, somehow more settled, but with the same storm gray eyes that had first captivated me. I dropped my bag and ran to him, and when he caught me in his arms, lifted me off the ground and spinning me around, I felt the last of my prison walls crumble. "Welcome home, baby," he whispered against my hair. "I am home," I replied, echoing words he'd said to me once in a moment of vulnerability. "I'm wherever you are." That was 5 years ago. We're married now. A small ceremony in the chapel of the community center, where I teach art classes to at-risk youth. Marcus owns his own construction company, specializing in renovation projects that give ex-cons second chances. People sometimes ask how we made it work, how love that started in such a dark place could survive in the light. The answer is simple. He protected me in the yard when I was weak, and he ruined me in the dark for anyone else. He saw something worth saving in a scared kid who didn't belong, and he loved me enough to wait for me to become the man I was meant to be. Prison was supposed to be about punishment, about paying debts to society. Instead, it gave me the greatest gift of my life, a love forged in darkness but strong enough to light up the world.